Welcome to the dangers of the world, my fellow adventurer. My name is Model 42 and today, in this new monster guide, we take a look at a monster that many a DM wants to use desperately in their games, but is tricky to set up, the beloved sea serpent. Stay till the end to get some tips on how you might use it in your games. Let's go. These fabled beasts resemble massive snakes with long rows of finned spines down their back. Temperamental and territorial, sea serpents can capsize a boat with ease, and most won't hesitate to do so when hungry or threatened. Stories are abound of aggrieved captains who spend their entire lives hunting down the elusive monster that sunk their ships and took their livelihoods. These hunts rely on rumors and glimpses of the beasts, as few survive the catastrophes wrought by sea serpents. While many fishermen's tales paint sea serpents as divinely appointed guardians of the ocean or, alternatively, as evil and demonic agents, the truth is that most sea serpents are simply very large beasts with a knack for avoiding magical detection. While an underwater cave will do as a lair, sea serpents prefer to build lairs by sinking ships. A sea serpent might even create a massive underwater graveyard by crashing several ships in the same location and letting the debris stack up on the ocean floor. This level 12 monster is an uncommon sight to most adventurers, since it is the literal stuff of legends. Also, this beast is neutral in its alignment, gargantuan in size and has the Dray animal, which means it cannot speak, has a lower intelligence and cannot be trained in skills with that attribute. Because of its snake-like body, it is relatively acrobatic, but where it shines is pure and utter strength, with an athletics value of plus 26, or 28 when it comes to swimming, which is the same value as its stealth. This makes it not only very hard to spot the beast, it uses a permanent ability called Undetectable to automatically counteract any form of detection, revelation or magical divination made against it, using stealth. It has a high armor class of 35 to protect the not that amazing hit points for her level and has decent saving throws with fortitude being the highest at plus 25. In the water, it swims with 12 spaces per movement easily, but on land it is a bit more clumsy, only being able to move 4 spaces at a time, which is still very useful, and means that it can fight on land as well. It has 3 main attacks it can use, a plus 27 jaw attack, and a plus 27 tail attack, both doing decent damage and enabling grabbing the target, which is only announcing it with a second action and the target is now in a big problem situation that is difficult to get rid of, since the athletics DC of the Serpent is 36, giving stronger or very dexterous characters a chance of about 30 to 40% to escape, which is not that great. If you think that flying would be great to stay out of reach of the big monster, then you might have just made a big mistake, since its third normal attack, Water Sprout, is ranged attack with up to 100 feet of a range increment, that attacks with strength and not dexterity, and has the water tray. Aside from dealing a bit of damage, you are then also the target of one of its abilities, which we look at now. The ability in question is called Sea Serpent's Algae, and once you are hit by its ranged attack, you have to make a DC 34 fortitude check, which is very high, to not be poisoned. If you suffer the first stage, you are confused, which is obviously dangerous, and have to spend your first action each turn to descend 20 feet. If you are flying, if this reaches stage 2, it works the same, but you spend all actions you can to get down first. This poison will end automatically after 6 rounds have passed, or until you get rid of it by making saves. This ability is scary, since not only does it make flying a bad idea, it also makes targets confused, which means they might attack their allies, since they randomly chose targets and have to make offensive actions or prepare for making those. Let's talk about 2 other abilities now, Constrict and Swallow Whole. If the serpent has grabbed you with its tail, it can just spend 1 action to deal 1d10 plus 14 bludgeoning damage to you, which is weaker than the tail attack itself. Since it has no DC listed, I personally would presume that you cannot defend against this, which makes sense. It is a giant snake after all. Should there be a DC involved of which I do not know about, it probably will be 36. Because of its athletics score. Way worse than that, however, is if you get grabbed by its mouth, in which case it can just spend 1 action to, well, swallow you with an athletics check against your reflex DC, and it has space for up to 9 spaces in its belly, so it can swallow 9 normal-sized heroes, for example, or 5 heroes and a horse, you name it. If you are first swallowed, and at the end of each of your turns, you will take 2d10 plus 6 bludgeoning damage. You count as grabbed, slowed 1 and have to hold your breath or start suffocating. You can get out by dealing 20 damage to the snake in this state, which is tough, but not impossible. This being scary will definitely be the least of your concerns right now. Another thing the snake can do is the ability, Capsize, which lets her make an athletics check against a DC of 35 or the ship's pilot's sailing law DC, whichever one is higher. The aquatic vessel has to be smaller than the Serpent, and adjacent for that. On a success, the boat or ship will begin to sink and counts as pretty much destroyed. In my opinion, the coolest ability, however, is its Spine Rake attack, which costs 2 actions. It extends the spines on its body and then swims or strides once. During this movement, each creature that is always adjacent to the snake has to make a reflex save against a DC of 32, which is relatively high, or take 4d6 plus 8 slashing damage, but depending on their result it can be 0, on a critical success, half, on a success, the normal damage, on a fail, or double damage, on a critical fail. The images in my head for this attack are extremely spectacular, which is why I love this ability even more. Now that we are aware of what the Serpent can do, how do we use this in our games? As the lore implies, for each sea serpent there are usually stories around in the local area, and since no one knows how old such a beast can become, these stories may be very old as well. Missing sailors, wreckages near the coast, or a cry for help message in a bottle that is swept ashore are all good ways of setting this monster up. Also, do not forget that this serpent can also be used in other large areas of water, like rivers, lakes and marshlands, at best used with different color schemes and regional fin and body type differences, to be more unique in its appearance. Since it can also walk on land, there could be weird tracks the players stumble upon in the wild or while searching, maybe hint to a lair that is more hidden and not in the obvious spot, like a big and wet stalagmite heavy cave behind a waterfall in a smaller pond, while the main sea is 1 or 2 miles away. Though the serpent does not hoard treasure like a dragon, in piles of bones that it will regurgitate or that come out in a different way, there might be some ghoul, magic loot, that was not digested. The usual scenario, however, will be the fight on the ocean, while the ship is still afloat. But how about finding the lair in a ship graveyard, stumbling upon an underwater cave or something like that as a final encounter? Since this is meant for a mid-level party, making it stronger for higher players is not that practical, though the epic template might help, and as with all wild beast, giving it the barbarian class will be okay as well. If you really want to switch it up though, want to hammer home the epic impact of this beast, especially against a high-level party, then switch out the animal trait with either the beast or dragon trait, raising its intelligence, making it able to speak, and also giving it the ability to use other classes, like for example a sorcerer, and switching it up in a way that it can use its tail for somatic components, but it will not work with material ones. This will be a twist they will not see coming, but also, maybe this new type of serpent is not hostile and wants to live in peace, but the newer human settlement invaded in its realm and now there is a conflict that has to be solved either with violence or high-level diplomacy. Also, maybe a normal sea serpent is used as a pet and bodyguard by a sorceress or druid with evil intentions, that the players have to fight together with the sea serpent. This can be a really epic and highly dangerous encounter. Since storytelling is the DM's forte, why not have a seemingly low-level sorcerer transform into such a beast to fight the party, with the only difference being that the sea serpent cannot cast spells, but can talk and ignores the animal trait, using the ones of the sorcerer instead. Sure, this is bending the rules a bit, but nowhere in the books is it said that you cannot do that. It is your game. Make it whatever you want, as long as it is consistent and fair. If the players fight the serpent on land, it should never be a problem for the DM, since all it does is making the serpent a bit slower. Do not forget that the creature is also not amphibian, so it needs air from time to time, like a crocodile. So while it prefers the water, it is not bound to it. You will find the sea serpent on page 288 of the first bestiary. And now, at the end of this video, I thank you so much for watching and hope you want to see more content like this in the future. Until then, please leave a like, subscribe for more content, and write me a comment what you think about this creature. Until then, you'll need a bigger boat.